Real JP Multimedia, proud sponsor of the Nerdball Podcast. Here to help you with all things audio, video, graphics, photo, web design. From weddings to real estate, commercial business to private use, we offer a big variety of services for almost any budget. And if we can't do it, we will find someone who can. Find us at realjp.com. That's REELJP.com. Real JP Multimedia.
This is the Nerdball Podcast with Lorenzo Melcher.
Thank you for downloading this episode, special episode of the Nerdball Podcast. Normally I sit down, interview somebody for an hour. We talk about ins and outs, but this one's special. This one's something specific. With me, I have Theresa Konwinski, which is, I struggled. I always want to call my friends' parents Mr. and Mrs., and I called you Mrs. Konwinski for a long time. So it's always a weird thing. I've talked about it before in my podcast. But we have Theresa Konwinski, I guess the creator of this event for Ukraine and for Doctors Without Borders. And I am butchering what all this information is, but that's what you're here for. You're here to promote this event and give some backstory on it. But first and foremost, thank you for coming on this podcast to want to put this event out there. Thank you for putting this event together. And to start off, explain to everyone what the purpose of this event is for.
Okay. Yeah. Well, first of all, thanks for having me. I really do appreciate it. We're really excited about this event. Doctors Without Borders is an organization of physicians and their coworkers who go all over the world, usually in times of disaster, to help people who are struggling with health issues, injuries, or just chronic illnesses and so forth. They have trouble getting supplies in a disaster, that kind of thing. In this case, they're in a war zone, and they actually have been in the Ukraine since Russia annexed the Crimea. So Doctors Without Borders has been involved with Ukraine for a while now. Of course, it's become a much more acute situation. And so I don't know, I was just watching the news one day and I thought, man, this stinks so much. I can't imagine having somebody just come into your country and say, we're going to take over and start bombing the heck out of you. And the fear that those people must live under every single day. And it was just bothering me. And I thought, what can I do? I got to be honest. I am not one of those people who's brave enough to pick up and go over there with Doctors Without Borders or, So I kind of started thinking about how the musicians in this community are so faithful about supporting causes where they can do some good. And of course, one of my first thoughts was Acoustics for Autism. That's a special event that happens every year here, and it's just makes hundreds of thousands of dollars to help people with autism. And it's all volunteer time on the part of the musicians who play at that. And so I kind of thought, why couldn't we do something like that for Ukraine? We might not, it might not be as big as Acoustics for Autism, but could we raise some money, through kind of putting on a benefit concert? And the more I thought about it, the more I thought, it's not really just the musicians in this town that are so generous with their time and talent. There are all kinds of other artists too. So we started asking some other people whether they would maybe be interested in being involved. For instance, we have some great poets in this town. And so there are a couple guys who are going to come, and during times that the bands are changing out, they're going to read poetry. And we have some fabulous artists in this town. And a couple of people are going to be coming down to paint while bands are playing. Their inspiration will come from the music. And, so it's going to be kind of an arts festival. We're going to have the owner of the Paper Garden there creating a paper sunflower arrangement. Wow. And if you've ever seen the flowers from the Paper Garden, they're fabulous. You would not know they weren't real. And so, we just got all kinds of stuff going on. And I just thought, what a great way to try to raise some money and people have come through for this thing. I actually can't say enough about the generosity of people who are coming through to, stepping up to
Yeah.
share their time and talent with us. So
And that's got to be the nerve-wracking part, right? So I'm with you. I always look at situations like, what can I do? I'm just me. Like, what can I do? And then you're like, okay, I have this idea. Now I have to reach out to all these people and see what they can do. But you're right
yeah,
that my brother-in-law Jake Paluski has been involved with Acoustics for Autism and does a bunch of stuff like that. But it does seem like there is a bunch of people who are just willing to, as long as there's somebody to ask, and you were that person to ask, and it seemed like everyone is just saying, yeah, let's do this thing.
well, I'll tell you, Aaron was a huge help. Aaron, our son, Aaron Konwinski, was a
Yeah.
huge help. He is much more connected to the music community these days than I am. Of course, we used to play in a band, when we were younger, but with my job, prior to retirement, I didn't have time to be in a band or anything.
Yeah.
So Aaron, who's still real connected to the music community, started asking a lot of his friends, hey, what, my mom's trying to get this organized. What do you think? And people just jumped in.
Mhm.
It was so cool. And then I started kind of contacting people on Facebook, and you have to kind of get out of your comfort zone, because I didn't know a lot of these people, and they certainly don't know me from the man in the moon.
Mhm.
And it was, it restores your faith in humanity
Yeah.
when you get the kind of response that we have gotten from people. It's really been a thing of beauty. So
And that's hard, like you said, to just reach out to practically strangers. I do
yeah,
that on my podcast. It's mostly people I know. Sometimes it's not, and I'm just afraid basically I'm afraid to hear no. But that's
yeah,
okay. People hear no all the time, and you just
yeah,
move on. You just move
yeah,
on.
yeah. And
So,
there were some bands who couldn't, who just couldn't do the event. They had either had members out of town, or they had other gigs that they were doing.
yeah.
Because it's interesting to me in the music community, which is a lot different from when I was playing in a band actively. The people have gigs like every day of the week practically
Yeah.
anymore.
Yeah.
Just all these different little gigs that they get. So there were a lot of people that were working on Sundays, August the 7th. But
Mhm.
you know what? We have a fabulous lineup. They're almost there are a couple of kind of I would say less known bands on here, or artists on here, but for the most part, it's really a solid lineup. People who all have their own following, and I hope all their followings follow them down to the
Yeah.
Bronze Boar, so we can raise some money.
Yeah. That's awesome. And I'm sure at no point in this whole plan of this, you're like, man, this is going to be easy, right? There's no point in like, this is all going to be difficult. But I know when you first started, like, I know there was a difficulty even finding a place.
Yep, yeah, absolutely. You know, I'm a pretty simple person. It feels like you should just be able to pick up your guitar or your
Yeah.
keyboard and go someplace, play some music, raise all this money for Doctors Without Borders, and of course, nothing is that easy. So yeah, the first issue we had to deal with was finding a venue, and because we were having difficulty finding a venue, then we started talking about like places like here in Holland. There's a beautiful little park called Strawberry Acres, and they've got a
Yeah.
really nice lodge. And we thought, well, what a great place that could be. But then you have to deal with. I want to be, people like to be able to come and listen to some music and have a beer or whatever, and you can't just do that. You've got to learn all about the liquor laws, and
Yeah.
and then we thought, like, okay, well, what happens if somebody does drink too much or something? And then we've got the responsibility of kind of monitoring that and making sure people aren't driving around. Ay. There's just a lot to, a lot to dealing with liquor and large crowds that I know nothing about. I felt like I was way over my head. Well, fortunately, Amy, our daughter, mentioned the Bronze Boar to me. She said, Mom, that'd be a great place. They have an inside stage, they have a nice outside stage. The area is bigger than you would realize. So I contacted Kara Thornton down at the Bronze Boar. She's the general manager. And gosh, what a helpful girl she's been. We
Mhm.
went down to see her and kind of walked around the place with her. And I thought, like, it's perfect, really. It's a beautiful old historic building. It's got a historic marker on it. And upstairs, like this long, beautiful wooden bar. I mean, just like real old time, kind of woodworking and so forth. It's a nice place. and this big, huge open space outside. I was shocked. I had no idea that anybody downtown had that kind of open space,
Mhm.
So anyway, they said, yeah, they signed on pretty much right away. And then Toledo Spirits also kind of signed on. They said, hey, we're interested in helping co-sponsor this thing. We'll come up with some drink specials and so forth for the day. And of course, they brew their own spirits, and they have some pretty tasty stuff.
Mhm.
So they're on board with us, and Kara's making some arrangements for some food trucks. So there'll be food trucks there, so people can just come and stay all day and have a meal and have a few drinks and listen to lots of great music and watch some cool artists at work.
Yeah, because at first, when you first hear about it, you're like, okay, it's there's gonna be bands, you're gonna listen to bands, but all these other things that I didn't even know of until now, the different artists, the food trucks, Toledo Spirits. I've talked to the guys from Toledo Spirits on the Metro Parks podcast. They're really good guys. They've done some stuff partnership with the Metro Parks. So all this stuff that's excuse me, man, I have this tickle in my throat I can't get rid of.
Hmm.
All this stuff that is more than just music.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, Christopher Faulconer is a painter who, as I mentioned earlier, he's going to be painting during one of the bands playing. And I don't know if you've ever watched anybody do that, but it is super cool to watch how the artist is inspired by the music and the piece of art that they come up with, while they're listening to music. Hannah Starseed is another artist, local artist and musician. She's going to come down and paint that day versus play her guitar, So, and then I had mentioned to you a girl that I used to work with at St. Luke's, actually, Mary Willits, who makes these fabulous paper flowers. She makes them for people's weddings and stuff. They're fabulous, Anyway, she's going to come down and make paper sunflower arrangement for us to raffle off, So
Wow.
yeah, yeah. Jute Mode made really cool T-shirts for us with the 419 United for Ukraine logo on them. So we'll be selling T-shirts down there. I think it's just going to be a great day. I kid you not, I'm super excited about it. We've got all kinds of music. Primarily on the inside stage, because it's a smaller stage, is where the acoustic guys will be playing.
Okay.
But outside is where the bands will be playing. There are a couple more acoustic type acts that'll be outside, but primarily bands. And we've got a band from Findlay that does 60s music. We've got Bridge County, who does bluegrass music. We've got Lori Swire and New Moon. She does a kind of a folk thing. And then the rest of it's just all mixed up music. You'll hear a little bit of everything that day, probably. I think it's going to be great fun. I'm not kidding you. I'm really looking forward to it.
Does this make you because sometimes when I like plan things or do this, do that, I go, this is fun. Now, this is obviously for a particular reason, but a couple questions. Does this make you like want to do more things? You're like, hey, I did this one thing. Now I can do more things to help other people. Or you're like, no, this shed a light on something I never knew about, and it's a lot harder than I thought it was. And this is a one-time deal, and I'm putting all my energy into this thing.
I would not rule out doing something like this again.
Mm-hmm.
This was a lot of work, and there was all kinds of governmental stuff that I had to do, filing all these forms with the IRS, with the state of Ohio, because of course we want everything to be real clean and above board.
Sure.
So to even get a bank account as a 501c3 organization, you've got to register, of course, with the federal government, and you've got to register with the state of Ohio. And so, we set it up so that people can make donations through PayPal, or they can just write a check to 419 United for Ukraine account at Huntington Bank, and just kind of did all this stuff. It was a lot of work, but the cool thing about it is that I learned a lot. And I learned a lot of stuff that I never probably would have had an opportunity to know about, other than kind of diving into this. So I worked for a 501c3 organization all my life, but I didn't know a darn thing about how they got that status. I mean, what did they have to go through to start that in the first place? Now I know a little bit more about it, and I think that's good for our brains to keep learning as we get older. So yeah, and you never know when that information might come in handy again. There's a doctor in our town. I'm sure you've heard of him. His name's Richard Pat. What a great guy he is. I mean, he's one of those guys that's got a real heart for mission work.
Okay.
And he picks up at the drop of a hat. If there's a disaster, etc., he picks up his team and off they go to help in whatever ways they can. Well, I got to tell you, he has a 501c3 organization. It's about the Commission on Relief and Education. That's not quite it. SCORE is the acronym for it.
Okay.
Anyway, I probably would have done the fundraiser for his organization if I'd ever dreamed that guy was going to pick up his team and go to a war zone. I couldn't believe it, but he did.
I was going to ask you if you
they were right on the border of Hungary, Okay. So anyway, I know that there may be an opportunity someday down the road to maybe try to do something for Dr. Pat's organization, because that's a great organization too. They do a lot of good, not only all over the world, but right here locally too. Blessings in Disguise is another organization that has helped us getting ready for this. Gosh, they donated money to us so we can make nice big banners to hang up down at the Browns War. And I mean, we've just had a lot of support from people all over the community. And gosh, Blessings in Disguise, John Sayer is the head of that, and he was very helpful in kind of helping me walk through some of the stuff that you have to do to create a 501c3 organization, so it's really nice to have all these great people to work with in our town,
Oh, definitely. It just makes everything go a lot smoother. And now, like I knew these people before, and now I know them so much better. I didn't know this little thing about them. If it wasn't for that thing, we wouldn't be here, Yep. All these different people. And I'm sure at some point, like if you make Aaron get up there and say thanks to everyone, it's just a laundry list of people.
Yeah.
It's one of those where it's, you're giving your acceptance speech for an Oscar, and you're like, hey, I'm running out of time here. That's how many people there are helping with this and wanting to be a part of it.
Yeah, it takes a village. No, not a lot of really good things happen if just one guy is doing it all. It really takes a lot of people putting their heads together and just kind of having that spirit of togetherness and giving, to make something like this happen. It wouldn't happen without everybody pitching in.
Yeah. Now, is there a particular place that people can go, or I don't know if there's a website or just a link somewhere that people can click on to read all about who's going to be there or what's going on and get all the information?
There's a Facebook events page for it.
Perfect.
419 United for Ukraine.
Okay.
So if people search 419 United for Ukraine in the Facebook events, it'll take you to our page. So and there'll be a lot of information there.
I will make sure I'll put it in the show notes too. When people listen to this, they can just click on it in the show notes. So
okay, yeah, thank you.
Yeah, so it's you said Sunday, August 7th, pretty much correct. All day.
Yep, yeah, right? It starts at noon. We really close up shop at 10 o'clock. The last band to take the stage outside is probably one of Toledo's most popular bands, Distant Cousins. Mm-hmm. And they're having one of my dear friends of 40 plus years now, Theresa Gregory, who, God, if you've ever heard Theresa sing, she sings like, man, she should be making records somewhere. She's got a fabulous voice, and so the Distant Cousins and Theresa Gregory are going to kind of close up the night for us, and it's going to be a great day. Yep.
Was there difficulty with, you have all these bands, was there difficulty when trying to figure out who goes where and for how long and that?
Something with the figuring out how long people have was pretty easy, because we just knew, it takes a few minutes to kind of get changed over in between acts. So the bands only get to play about 40 minutes. The guys inside, the acoustic guys that don't have quite as much equipment typically to deal with, will play for 45. But I asked people if there was a specific time that they just absolutely could not play, because like I said, a lot of these guys have gigs. There are guys playing this day, playing our benefit, who then have gigs later in the day,
Oh, okay.
So we just kind of arranged the schedule. I sent it out to everybody, and would you believe not one person asked for a switch? Not one. Yeah.
That's awesome. And again, it shows that they're willing to, like, okay, it's a tight window, but I can fit it in at this time, then I'll just go to my next gig, but I want to be able to, do this thing, help out.
Yeah.
Well, this is awesome. you had, and I will publicly apologize because you did ask me to be a part of it. I can't make it work for myself.
Yeah.
It's something I wish I could be a part of. It sounds awesome. I wish you nothing but the best. I will, like I said, put a link in the show notes. I'll make sure I'll share it on my pages and stuff, or on the podcast page, just so people, so we can fill that place up. It'd be great to be able to say, hey, we're full here. We got to go outside, or wait, wait for a couple of people to leave. That's I know that's what you're looking for. We're hoping to have this thing packed and raise as much money as we can.
Yep, exactly right. We got I'm sorry you can't be there too, but something I'll tell you, we do have two really good MCs. A fellow by the name of Dan Denton, who's a local writer, and holy mackerel, he wrote this book. I don't know if you've read it. It's $100 a Week Hotel. Oh my gosh, it's one of the best books I read last year. I'm not kidding you. And he's a really good poet. In fact, he'll be doing some of his poetry too. Okay. And then Mike McCoy, who I worked with for years at St. Luke's Hospital, is one of the funniest guys. I just love him, So we're going to still be in good hands, Lorenzo, even though you can't be there,
Oh, no doubt, no doubt. I'm glad that there's people willing to be a part of this and are able to be a part of it. So
yeah, me too.
Yeah. Is there any other information you want to put out there before we end it here?
Something I can't really think anything else. I think we pretty much covered the whole thing,
Great.
So just of course I guess I would just say I'm eternally grateful to all these people who've come forward to help us, and I want to thank you too for helping us get the word out about it. So
sure. No, this was great, and anything I can do in the meantime, let me know. So
okay, yeah, thanks.
Yeah, good luck, and we're all hoping that any dollar amount is a good dollar amount. So
that's right.
People need to go out there and just have some fun.
Yep, exactly. Oh, that's one thing I guess I should say.
Sure.
We are asking for a $10 admission donation.
Okay.
So
all right.
People need to bring a 10 spot with them at least to get in the door. So
yeah, perfect. Yeah. All right, Theresa. Okay. Well, thanks for coming on, and good luck with 419 United for Ukraine.
Thanks a million, Lorenzo.
Yep. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you for Theresa Konwinski for coming on and talking about 419 United for Ukraine. Looks like it's going to be an awesome event. Please check it out. Click on the link in the show notes, or any of the posts that I make on my personal page or the Facebook page or the podcast page. A couple other things. I went to the NFL Hall of Fame in Canton this past weekend. And if you haven't gone, it is something you need to do, especially obviously if you're an NFL fan. I took my son with me, and we were there for almost 3 hours. I went last year with my dad and some other family members. We went during the enshrinement, and it was super packed. Not only the enshrinement, but also just going into the Hall of Fame. It was basically just one lane. You didn't really get to click on any videos or hit any buttons or try out any of the, there was one where you could try your hand at replay and see if you got the call correct and that kind of stuff. So going then, the enshrinement was awesome last year, but this year was great because we got to do everything and see everything. And there was 2 videos about 15 minutes long that we got to sit down and watch. One, if you're a fan of the Rams, there's a Super Bowl experience. I'm assuming they make a video after each Super Bowl. But it was, since I'd say the fan of the Rams because they won the Super Bowl, but it was really cool to watch that video. There was another one where you're sitting in the locker room and some players come up on the screen and talk to you about what it means for them to be in the Hall of Fame. It was just a cool thing. We went through the store, obviously, to buy some stuff there. But if you ever get the chance to do it, I think you should. It's well worth the price. And it was a fun time, especially going with my son, who really wanted to go, was really excited. He was really into a lot of stuff. He liked pushing the buttons to interact with the videos and all the touch screens and asking questions and stuff. So it was a pretty cool thing. So again, if you get the chance to do it, 100% do it. It was awesome. And we went in the morning, so go in the morning because it was even less crowded when we went. But again, we were there for almost 3 hours. But the reason we were in Canton is because we went to a weekend long twirling. It's called Twirling Unlimited International Baton Competition. It was insane. There were so many people, or so many baton twirlers. It was at the Canton Civic Center, and it was just it were long days. On Saturday we were there for 14 hours. On Sunday we were there for 9 hours. So it was a long weekend. But to be able to see my daughter twirl and be amongst her friends, and to see our group, Perrysburg's Twirling Sophisticates, everyone did really well. It was a fun time. I shared some videos on my page, but it's another world. And I thought I'd get some time away to do some other stuff, but it's a constant thing all day. You got to be in this lane or that lane to be judged. And there was times where my daughter was in one lane and she had to be in the other lane. So she had to tell one judge, be like, hey, I'll be back. I got to go do this other thing. There's costume changes. My wife was on top of it though. She knew schedules. She was all about it. Her coach was really good. And the older girls were really good because there was no parents allowed on the floor. So whenever there was, my daughter had to be somewhere else, had to be basically two places at once. The older girls would stand in for her and basically say, hey, she's here. She's over at this other lane getting judged for this thing, and she'll be back. So they really helped her out a lot, which is good to see. I talked about it when I talked to Andrea Whiting on the podcast, the head of Twirling Sophisticates, and Lexi Peets. She's the featured twirler at the University of Cincinnati. And I talked about how much it means to me as a parent to know that these older girls are there to help my daughter. And I know that'll carry on when she's older and she'll be the one helping. But she looks up to them, and it's great that they're cheering her on all the time. At one point, there was like 4 of them just watching her do a solo or do her strut. So it was cool to see and to see the team cheer them on. And my daughter likes that too. She likes to watch the older girls. And so it was a fun weekend. That's why the podcast is coming out when it's coming out, because I was away. But we got another podcast coming. I got my friend coming up, Trey Smith, coming up later this week. We're going to talk all about college football. So I'm looking forward to that. Again, go to Facebook and type in 419 United for Ukraine to get all that information. And I appreciate you downloading the podcast. Thanks. Thanks, everybody, for checking out this episode of the Nerdball Podcast. Please rate, review, and subscribe wherever you're hearing this, on any of the podcatchers. On YouTube, hit that subscribe button so you never miss an episode. We're coming at you 2 times a week now, audio and video. Check us out on all the social medias. Just search the Nerdball Podcast on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. We're out there. Gmail is the nerdballpodcast@gmail.com. If you want to shoot us an email, we'll be happy to get back to you. Thanks to Real JP Multimedia, Cuttlefish Graphics, Perrysburg Junior High STEM Lab, and Big Daddy Graphics for helping out the podcast. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.